Hello, my name is Aria, and I'm about to tell you how my own family and my husband's child destroyed everything I'd worked for. They pushed me to the edge, and I was left with nothing but broken promises and betrayal. But what they didn't know, I wasn't going to let them win. Not this time. I took back what was mine. The mansion that was stolen from me, I bought it back. But when you think it's over, it's just the beginning. What happens next will shock you. I woke up early, the silence of the morning wrapping around me like a blanket. The coffee machine hummed in the background, filling the air with a familiar aroma of dark roast. Another quiet morning, another routine. But as I made my way to the kitchen, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. My hands moved automatically, making the coffee I've been making for years now, without thinking. A gentle clink of the spoon against the mug, the sound of the refrigerator door closing. But my thoughts drifted to him. Reginald, my husband. The man I had spent half my life with, the one who'd made promises he'd never keep. There was a distance in him, something I couldn't quite touch, but I felt it. It was in the way he would barely look at me, the way his responses seemed more out of obligation than affection. I knew the pattern. Reginald was always distracted, always lost in his thoughts or his phone. He didn't seem to care that much anymore, and honestly, I had stopped trying to make him. But deep down, the wounds were still there, raw and unhealed. The years of sacrifice and submission, giving up pieces of myself for the family. No one had ever asked me if I was okay. No one had ever asked me if I needed something, anything. I glanced at him as he walked into the kitchen, barely making eye contact. "Morning," I said softly, but he only nodded, distracted by his phone as usual. I stood there, watching him, wondering what had happened to the man I married. It wasn't always like this. I had to remind myself of the early days, before the routine, before the pain, before everything turned into silence and distance. I could feel the unease building in my chest as I went through the motions, making breakfast. I'd noticed something earlier, his phone buzzing with messages, a message that made me pause for a moment. But I quickly dismissed it. Nothing to be concerned about. Or so I told myself. He didn't look up from his phone, didn't ask me how my day was going, didn't even acknowledge the coffee I had made. It wasn't just indifference, it was something worse. I didn't have time to dwell on it, though. There was too much on my mind. My children, the house, the never-ending responsibilities. And yet, in that moment, I felt a sudden wave of exhaustion, the kind that settles deep in your bones, telling you that maybe, just maybe, you've been carrying this weight too long. The night came too quickly, and with it, the text that would change everything. I woke up to the glow of my phone screen at 2:47 a.m. It was a message from Reginald. A cryptic message, short, demanding. My heart started to race as I read it. "I'm at Claire's. If you don't pick me up, it's over. Our marriage is over." I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of it. The words didn't sink in immediately. Reginald at Claire's? Claire, my so-called friend, the one who had always been so friendly, so supportive. The betrayal stung more than I expected, but I didn't react right away. The anger hadn't hit me yet. Instead, there was just confusion, hurt, a deep aching wound that I didn't know how to tend to. I sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of the message sinking into me. The silence of the house felt deafening. I glanced at Reginald, still fast asleep beside me, unaware of the storm that was starting to brew. I could feel my breath quickening, but I stayed still, processing it all. He wanted me to pick him up, to save him, to pretend like everything was normal, but it wasn't. Not anymore. A part of me wanted to scream, to demand answers. But another part of me, one that I had buried for so long, just paused. I forwarded the message to Claire's husband, Ryan. Let him know where Reginald was. I didn't know why I did it, but it felt like the right thing to do. I didn't respond to Reginald, not right away. And when I did, it wasn't to pick him up. I knew, in that moment, I wasn't going to let him have that control over me anymore. Not after all these years. The morning came, and with it, Reginald's tear-filled eyes and desperate voice. He stood at the door, pleading, claiming he had nowhere to go. His pride was gone, and in its place, a broken man who knew he had pushed too far. Aria, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please, I need you. I stood there, cold, unfeeling. The Aria who had fought for their family, the Aria who had sacrificed everything, wasn't here anymore. She was gone. In her place was a woman who had lived through years of lies, of silent suffering, of betrayal, and I wasn't going to let it continue. I wanted to slam the door in his face, but I didn't. Instead, I took a deep breath. I could see the pain in his eyes, but I wasn't moved. Not this time. I remembered the early days, how we used to be. The laughter, the warmth, the promises we made. How hard I worked to hold everything together. How many times I let him take the credit for things I did. How many times I put my needs last. I thought about all of it, and it hurt. But now, as I stood before him, something inside me shifted. I can't do this anymore, Reginald, I said, my voice steady. You've broken my trust, and I can't fix that. Not for you. Not for us. His face contorted in frustration, but I didn't flinch. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I was tired of being afraid of everything. Please, Aria, I need you. I can't survive without you. I shook my head. You've already made your choice. And now, so have I. He stood there, speechless, as I closed the door on him. I didn't look back. As the door clicked shut, I felt a strange calm wash over me. It wasn't relief, not exactly. It was more like a weight lifting, a burden I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. I sank onto the couch, staring blankly at the wall. I had done it. I had let him go, and for the first time in years, I felt free. But there was a bitter taste in my mouth. I had spent so much time trying to make him love me again, trying to make our family work. And now, I had nothing but the echoes of what could have been. The silence was broken by a knock on the door. Ryan Claire's husband. "I know what you're going through," he said, his voice soft. "I've been there too. We've both been lied to, betrayed. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. I didn't feel like the only one carrying this burden." Ryan shared his story with me, how he had known about the affair for months, but had been too afraid to confront it. How, like me, he had been living in denial. But hearing his words made me realize something. I wasn't the only one who had been hurt by this. "I think we both know we've been living in the shadow of these lies long enough," Ryan said quietly. "And that's when I made a decision, a bold one. I wasn't just going to walk away. I wasn't going to let Reginald and Claire steal everything from me. Not without a fight." As Ryan left, I sat there, staring at the empty space where Reginald had been standing. I realized that the fight was far from over, but I was no longer afraid. I wasn't just fighting for house or for my dignity. I was fighting for my life. And this time, I wouldn't let anyone take that from me. The emptiness of the house felt heavier than it ever had before. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, touching the same furniture, the same walls, but everything felt so distant now. The echoes of laughter, the clinking of dishes, the familiar shuffle of footsteps, those sounds were all gone. Reginald's absence left a void in every corner of the house, but it wasn't just the physical space, it was the emotional space. The weight of years of sacrifice for a marriage that was built on promises, lies, and unspoken resentment. I had spent so many years tending to everyone else. Reginald, the kids, even my parents, and in doing so, I had forgotten about myself. I had poured everything into keeping the peace, making sure everyone else was okay, while I quietly withered. But now, as I stood alone, staring out the window at the empty street, something had changed. The feeling of being unappreciated, of being invisible, was starting to lift. It wasn't gone entirely, but I could feel it loosening its grip on me. Reginald had sent a message. That morning, his usual request for forgiveness, his usual plea for a second chance. But this time, I didn't feel the urgency to respond. In fact, I didn't feel the need to respond at all. I didn't owe him an explanation. Not anymore. Instead, I focused on my own healing, my own journey. I had been waiting for him to change, for him to come back and be the man I needed him to be. But now, I realized I was waiting for someone who didn't exist. As I sat in the silence, I thought about the mansion, the house we had built together, the place that had once symbolized the dream of a perfect family. Now, it felt like a prison, a reminder of all the years I had spent trying to make everything work for him, for us, only for it to come crashing down. But I also knew one thing. I wasn't ready to let go of it. Not just yet. I started planning. I wasn't going to walk away from everything I had worked for. I was going to take that house back, but this time, it wouldn't be for him. It would be for me. I was going to reclaim what was mine. I didn't know how, and I didn't know when, but I knew I would make it happen. The thought gave me a strange sense of power. It was the first time in a long while that I felt like I was making a decision for myself. The next day, I met with Ryan Fitzgerald. He had been my lifeline these past few days, someone who understood what I was going through. I needed someone who didn't just see me as a victim of my circumstances. I needed someone who saw my potential, my strength, even when I couldn't see it myself. Ryan wasn't just offering me a shoulder to lean on. He was offering me a chance to stand up and fight for my future. Aria, you don't have to keep doing this on your own, he said as we sat at a cafe, the sunlight filtering through the window. I've been where you are. I know how it feels to lose yourself in someone else's life, but now it's your turn. His words hit me harder than I expected. He was right. It had always been about everyone else. Always. But now, I had a chance to do something for myself. For the first time in years, I was going to make a choice that was mine alone. Ryan helped me navigate the process of securing funding for a business venture. I had always been passionate about helping women, especially those who had been through similar struggles as me, women who had lost themselves in their relationships, in their roles as mothers or wives. The idea of creating a brand that empowered these women, that reminded them of their worth, felt like the perfect next step. It was something I could call my own, something that would define me, not by the titles others had given me, but by what I had the strength to build. I was nervous. The idea of starting a business, of stepping out on my own, was daunting. But I was also excited. For the first time in so long, I wasn't thinking about what others expected of me. I was thinking about what I wanted. Ryan was there every step of the way, encouraging me when I doubted myself, giving me the confidence to push through my fears. And little by little, I started to see the future I had been waiting for, a future that wasn't tethered to the past. But as my independence grew, so did the resistance from my family. They couldn't understand why I had chosen to end my marriage. They couldn't fathom that Reginald, with all his flaws, could hurt me so deeply that I couldn't forgive him. You should have tried harder, Aria, my mother said, shaking her head. You've got kids. You can't just walk away from a marriage like that. I felt the sting of her words, but it didn't pierce as deeply as it once would have. The truth was, I was no longer looking for approval. I had spent my whole life trying to appease others, trying to make everyone happy. But now, for the first time, I was doing something for me. I didn't walk away, Mum, I said, my voice steady but firm. I fought for years, and now I'm fighting for myself. The argument with my mother was hard. She didn't understand. She couldn't. But in that moment, I realized something important. I didn't need her to understand. I didn't need anyone to understand. This was my journey, and I was the only one who could walk it. As the weeks went by, I began to feel stronger. My family may have questioned my decision, but I knew it was the right one. I was finally free from the chains that had bound me to a life I no longer recognized. I was building something new, something that was all mine. Later that week, I took a trip to see the mansion. I hadn't been there since the day I left Reginald. The thought of walking through those doors again stirred up so many emotions, pain, resentment, longing. But it also filled me with something else, determination. I met with the real estate agent outside the grand gates. The house stood before me, imposing and beautiful. It was everything Reginald and I had dreamed of. But now, it felt like a symbol of everything I had lost. Walking through the halls, I could almost hear the laughter that had once filled the rooms, the quiet moments when we thought everything was perfect. But then, the memories shifted. Reginald's betrayal, the lies, the isolation. The agent spoke, but I barely heard her. My mind was racing. I wanted this house back, not to relive the past, but to reclaim it, to turn it from a place of sorrow into something that would belong to me. I wasn't just buying a house, I was buying my freedom. I thought about the price, the emotional cost. Would owning it again make me feel powerful, or would it trap me in a past I was trying to escape? I looked at the mansion one last time before making the decision. I would make an offer. No matter what it took, I was taking control of my future. That evening, I sat down with my therapist. I had started therapy a few weeks ago, and it had been a harder journey than I had anticipated. Talking about the years I spent in Reginald's shadow, in my family's shadow, had brought up things I hadn't realized I had buried deep inside. I don't know who I am anymore, I confessed to her, the words spilling out before I could stop them. I've spent so much time being everything for everyone else, and now I don't know what's left. The therapist nodded. That's normal, Aria. You've been living for others. But now it's time to live for yourself. It was hard to hear, but it was also exactly what I needed. For so long, I had been defined by my roles: wife, mother, daughter. But now, I was reclaiming my identity. I'm ready, I said softly, though I wasn't sure if I believed it yet. I'm ready to start over. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about all the steps I had taken so far. It wasn't easy. There were days when the pain of the divorce hit me like a wave, leaving me breathless and unsure. But each day, I was taking back pieces of myself that I thought were lost forever. I wasn't done yet. The hardest part was still to come. The first step back into that mansion felt like walking through the past, a past I thought I had left behind for good. The weight of it all, the memories, the betrayal, the life I had built with Reginald hung heavy in the air. But today, I wasn't here to mourn the past. I was here to take back what was mine. The real estate agent was speaking, but her words barely registered. This place, she said, has a lot of history, a lot of potential. Her voice was a distant hum against the backdrop of my thoughts. The place was grand, more than I could have ever dreamed of. Marble floors, high ceilings, the intricate details that made it a mansion fit for royalty. But what I saw was not just stone and glass. It was my life, my past, standing in front of me like a challenge I had to face. I stood in the foyer, my fingers brushing against the grand staircase as memories of laughter and quiet moments with Reginald flooded my mind. But there was no time for nostalgia, no time to reminisce about what could have been. I had a decision to make. I was ready to buy back this house, not to relive the past, but to reclaim the future. Do you know how much this will cost? The agent asked, pulling me from my thoughts. Her voice was a reminder that this wasn't going to be easy. I didn't need reminding. The price was steep, more than steep, actually. But I could feel it in my bones I had to do this. For me. I'm aware, I replied, my voice steady despite the turbulence inside. I'm ready to make an offer. As the agent led me through the mansion, showing me rooms that once held both happiness and sorrow, I felt the weight of my decision settle in. I wasn't just buying a house, I was buying back my life, my dignity, and my independence. This place symbolized everything I had lost and everything I was ready to fight for. The drive back to my apartment was quiet, the car's engine humming softly beneath me as my mind raced. It was a lot to take in, all at once. Reginald's absence still stung, his message from earlier that day echoing in my mind. He didn't think I could do it. He didn't think I could move on without him. But here I was, standing at the threshold of a new beginning. The phone buzzed in my pocket, interrupting my thoughts. I pulled over and looked at the screen. Reginald. I didn't hesitate. I answered, bracing myself for what was coming. Aria. His voice was pleading, desperate. I don't understand why you're doing this. You're making a huge mistake. This house, it's our home, our life together. I felt the familiar rush of anger and hurt bubbling up inside me, but I tamped it down. This wasn't the time for emotional outbursts. I had already made my decision. It's not our home anymore, Reginald, I said, my voice clear and firm. It's mine. It always should have been. There was a pause on the other end of the line, his silence speaking volumes. You can't just erase everything we had, he finally said, his words heavy with guilt. I'm not erasing anything, I replied, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. I'm taking back what's mine. I hung up before he could say anything else. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me anymore. Not now, not ever again. The next day, my family's reaction was exactly what I expected. A mixture of concern, confusion, and judgment. My mother was the first to express her disapproval, her disappointment hanging in the air like a cloud. Why are you doing this, Aria? She asked, her voice tight with concern. This house, this decision, it's reckless. Why not just move on? Why do you need to go back to that place? I tried to steady my breath, not wanting to let her words shake me. I'm not going back to the past, Mom. I'm moving forward, I said, my voice calm but unwavering. This is my decision. For the first time in my life, I'm doing something for me. Her eyes softened for a moment, but there was still an edge of disbelief. You can't keep doing this, fighting everyone. I'm not fighting anyone, I said, shaking my head. I'm standing up for myself. Her disappointment lingered, but I no longer cared. It was my journey, not hers. My future wasn't dependent on her approval, or anyone else's for that matter. The decision to buy back the mansion wasn't easy. The next few days were spent meeting with financial advisors, pulling together every resource I could find. I needed a significant amount of money to make it happen, money I didn't have. But I wasn't going to let that stop me. I spent hours on the phone, trying to secure a loan, seeking out every possible avenue to make this dream a reality. My financial history wasn't perfect, But I wasn't going to let that define me. I wasn't going to let it stop me. That night, after another long day of phone calls and meetings, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the paperwork in front of me. It felt like too much risk, too much to lose. But then I remembered the moment in the mansion when I had made my decision to buy back what was rightfully mine. I wasn't going to back down now. Not when I had come this far. The phone rang again the next day. I knew who it was before I even looked. Reginald. I answered with a sigh. What is it now, Reginald? His voice was tight, forced. If you go through with this buying the house back, I'll make sure you never see a dime of the money we share. I'll fight you in court, Aria. I'll make sure you regret this. I let his words sink in, but only for a moment. This was the same tactic he had always used: manipulate, control, scare me into submission. But not anymore. You can't threaten me anymore, Reginald, I said, my voice firm. I'm not afraid of you. I'm doing this, and nothing you say is going to change that. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Reginald didn't have anything else to say. I wasn't his to control anymore. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The paperwork for the mansion was finalized, and I signed the dotted line, sealing the deal. I had done it. I had taken back what was mine. But as I looked around at the house, at the life I was about to rebuild, I couldn't help but feel the weight of it all. This wasn't just about the house. It was about reclaiming myself, my identity. It was about proving to myself that I was worthy of more than the life I had been living. And I wasn't done yet. I had made my decision. The mansion, the life I had lost, and the independence I longed for were all within my grasp. But there was a price. The toll it had already taken on me, emotionally and mentally, was real. But I had come this far, and there was no turning back. Every day, I heard from Reginald his calls, his text messages, each one growing more desperate, more accusatory. He was relentless, trying to talk me out of buying back the mansion, trying to convince me that it wasn't worth it. His voice on the other end of the line was full of that old manipulation, that familiar charm laced with thinly veiled threats. Aria, you can't just do this, he said during one of his many calls. You're making a mistake. That house, it's our history. You can't just erase everything. Think about the kids. Think about us. I let his words hang in the air, but I wasn't moved. Not anymore. There was a time when his words would have made me hesitate, but not now. He didn't know it, but he had lost his grip on me long ago. I'm not erasing anything, Reginald, I said, my voice calm but unwavering. I'm taking back what's mine. I could feel the anger building inside me, but I didn't let it overtake me. I had learned to control it, to harness it. This was my fight now, and no one, especially not him, was going to dictate my choices. As I ended the call, I could feel my resolve harden. This wasn't about the mansion anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and everything I had sacrificed. This was my moment, and nothing was going to stop me. The knock at the door was unexpected. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a brief moment, my heart skipped a beat. Was it Reginald again? Had he come to plead with me in person? Or worse, had he come to try and stop me? I opened the door, and standing there was someone I hadn't seen in years. My old friend Vivian, someone I had trusted once. She stood there, looking hesitant, her eyes full of something I couldn't place. "Vivian," I said, trying to mask the surprise in my voice. "What are you doing here?" She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her gaze flickering nervously. "I needed to talk to you, Aria. There's something you don't know. Something about the house. About Reginald." The words hit me harder than I expected. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice steady, though I could feel the uncertainty creeping in. "What do you know?" Vivian hesitated, then took a deep breath. "It's not just a house, Aria. Reginald has hidden things from you. He's made some deals, financial ones, that you don't know about. Things that could hurt you." I felt my stomach drop. "What kind of deals?" I asked, my mind already racing. She told me about the debts Reginald had accrued, the shady financial dealings he had made with some investors behind my back. She told me how he'd used the mansion as collateral, how he had taken out loans without consulting me, the woman who had been his partner for so many years. The realization hit me hard. I had been blind, but now everything was clear. Reginald hadn't just betrayed me emotionally, he had financially enslaved me as well. Vivian's words echoed in my mind, and I knew I couldn't back down now. If I bought the mansion back, I would be taking control not just of a house, but of the life I'd been forced to share with him. I wasn't about to let him destroy me emotionally or financially. "I'll handle it, Vivian. Thank you for telling me. But this is my battle now," I said, my voice resolute. The following day, Reginald called again, this time with a new threat. "You think you can just take back that house, Aria? If you do, I'll make sure you never see a penny of our shared assets. You'll be left with nothing." I had expected this, but hearing it from him, it still stung. "You're already trying to take everything from me, Reginald," I said, my voice ice cold. "You're not going to win this time. I'm done letting you control me." His silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I could hear him seething, but I didn't care anymore. He had no power over me, not like he used to. Not anymore. "You can't scare me, Reginald. You've already taken enough. This time, I'm taking back what's mine." I hung up before he could say another word. The battle was over, and I had won. I met with my financial advisor the next morning. I needed a plan, something concrete, something that would get me the funds I needed to buy the mansion back. The road ahead was not going to be easy, but I wasn't backing down. "We'll make this work, Aria," the advisor said, looking over the numbers. "It'll take some work, but if we secure the funding, the house will be yours." I nodded, my mind already racing. I had no time to waste. This was my life on the line. I wasn't just fighting for a house. I was fighting for my freedom, my independence. "I'm ready," I said, my voice filled with determination. "Let's do this." The process wasn't easy. It took days of negotiations, countless phone calls and meetings with lenders. Every step was a struggle, but I refused to give up. I couldn't. This was the price of reclaiming my life, and I was willing to pay it. The final day arrived. The paperwork was signed. The mansion was mine again. I stood in the doorway of the house that had once been my home, but this time I wasn't seeking forgiveness. I wasn't looking for approval. I was here to take what was mine, and nothing was going to stop me. I knew this day would come, but I wasn't prepared for how hard it would hit. Reginald's calls had been relentless, each one an attempt to bring me back into his world, to weaken my resolve. He had been trying to manipulate me into abandoning my dream of reclaiming the mansion, but I had reached a point where I no longer cared. I was done. Done with his lies, done with his emotional games, and done with feeling like I had no control over my own life. He was always good at making me feel small, like my desires didn't matter, like I was never enough. But now I felt that anger welling up inside me. Anger at the years wasted, anger at the constant feeling of being invisible in my own marriage. And for the first time, it wasn't fear or hesitation that filled me, it was power. The power to stand my ground. When Reginald called that afternoon, I didn't hesitate. I picked up the phone, my grip tightening around the receiver. "Aria, why are you doing this?" Reginald's voice was calm, too calm, but I could hear the desperation underneath. "This isn't you. We've been through so much together." I didn't let him finish. "We've been through a lot, but it's not what you think. You're not the man I thought you were. You never were." My voice was steady, but it echoed the strength I'd only just begun to realize I had. "I'm not the woman I used to be either. You can't control me anymore, Reginald." There was a long pause. I could feel his rage on the other end of the line. He had never liked it when I stood up for myself. "You think you can just walk away from everything? From me? From your family?" he spat. "You don't get to decide that anymore," I said, my voice firm. "I've made my decision. I'm taking control of my life, starting with that house, and nothing you do will change that." The silence on the other end was deafening, but I didn't care. I had already made up my mind. The woman who had stood by for years, quietly enduring, was gone. In her place was someone who would no longer shrink in the shadows of his manipulations. The next day, just as I thought I could finally breathe, I received a letter from Reginald's lawyer. It was a threat, wrapped in legal jargon, but the message was clear. If I went through with buying back the mansion, he'd fight me in court. He claimed I didn't have the right to reclaim it. The mansion, he argued, was tied up in financial entanglements that would make any attempt to take it back impossible. I read the letter over and over, the fear rising inside me. But with every word, I felt my resolve growing stronger. This was just another manipulation, another attempt to scare me into submission. I couldn't let him win. I picked up the phone and called my own lawyer, determined to fight back. I wasn't going to let him control this too. When I met with my lawyer, he explained the situation. There were indeed legal issues, but nothing insurmountable. I wasn't going to back down. I had already come so far. "Aria, there are risks," my lawyer said, carefully laying out the fact. "Reginald isn't going to make this easy. But if you're determined, We can fight this. I nodded. I've fought for everyone else's happiness for years. It's my turn now. I left the office with a new sense of purpose. Reginald's threats didn't scare me. They only fueled my determination. I wasn't going to let him take any more from me. Later that evening, just as I was starting to feel a sense of clarity, someone knocked on my door. When I opened it, I was surprised to see Lily, my older sister. She had always been the one to stay on the sidelines, never quite understanding the decisions I made, especially regarding Reginald. But as I invited her inside, I could see the concern in her eyes. I heard about the mansion, she said softly, sitting down across from me. Are you sure this is the right thing to do? I could feel my emotions bubbling up, but I kept them in check. I've thought about this for a long time, Lily. I can't keep living like this. I need to take control of my own life. This is my chance to rebuild. Lily hesitated, then reached across the table, placing a hand on mine. I get it, she said, her voice softer now. I've seen what Reginald has done to you. You deserve this. You deserve to be happy. Her words were unexpected, but they felt like a balm to the wound I hadn't realized was still raw. I wasn't alone in this fight. I had support, even if it wasn't from everyone I'd hoped for. I'm doing this for me, I said, my voice steady, and I'm not going to let anyone stop me. The next few days were a whirlwind. I spoke with my lawyer, made calls to lenders, and started preparing the paperwork for the purchase. Every step forward felt like a victory, but also like a battle I hadn't fully won yet. Reginald's presence was still looming over me, his threats lingering in the back of my mind. But with every move I made, I felt stronger. I wasn't just buying a house, I was taking back everything that had been taken from me. And then Reginald made his move. I was sitting at the kitchen table when the call came in. It was him, and he wasted no time. If you go through with this, I'll ruin you, he said, his voice low and threatening. You think you can just waltz in and take what's mine? I'll make sure you never see a dime, not a penny. I held the phone tight, my grip shaking with anger. You've already taken everything from me. Reginald, I said, my voice cold. But this is mine, and you can't take it. Not now, not ever. The silence on the other end was telling. He was trying to figure out how to win, but I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. I'm done with you, I said, and hung up. The next morning, I stood in front of the mansion, the place that had once held so much meaning for me, and for the first time, I didn't feel the weight of regret. I felt a strange sense of peace. I wasn't here to beg for forgiveness. I wasn't here to play by anyone else's rules. This time, I was here to take back what was mine. I've spent too many years living for everyone else, I thought. Now it's my turn. As I walked through the front door, I knew this was just the beginning. The battle wasn't over, but I was ready for whatever came next. The moment had arrived. Everything I had fought for was about to come to a head. I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was ready. The mansion was more than just bricks and mortar. It was a symbol of everything I had lost and everything I was about to reclaim. This wasn't about material things anymore. This was about me, my dignity, my life, my worth. I had spent too many years letting others dictate my path. It was time to walk on my own. I sat at the table with my lawyer, the document spread out before me. This was the final step, the final push. There was no turning back now. My hand hovered over the papers, the weight of this decision settling in my chest. But there was no hesitation, only resolve. This is it, I thought, my fingers finally signing the documents. This is my future. Reginald had fought me every step of the way, trying to manipulate me, trying to guilt-trip me. He had underestimated how strong I had become. He thought he could control me with his threats and lies, but I was done. I wasn't his anymore. The call came just as I was leaving the office, papers in hand, my heart still racing from the adrenaline of the decision I had just made. Aria. Reginald's voice was smooth, but I could hear the anger simmering beneath. You really think you can just take it all back? You've got no right. This will end badly for you. I stood still, the words coming in like arrows, but I wasn't going to flinch. You've never had control over me, Reginald, I replied, my voice unwavering. You lost that a long time ago. I'm not playing your games anymore. This is my life. The silence on the other end stretched out, but I wasn't backing down. Don't do this, he said, a hint of desperation creeping into his tone. You'll regret it. No, Reginald. The only regret I'll have is not doing it sooner, I snapped. Goodbye. And with that, I hung up the phone. I wasn't going to let him scare me anymore. This was my final stand. The next morning, just as I thought I might get a break, the betrayal hit me. It was a text message, one that shook me to my core. A family member, someone I thought I could trust, had been in cahoots with Reginald. They had been feeding him information, undermining everything I had worked for. I stared at the message, disbelief flooding through me. How could they? This was supposed to be my fight, my battle, not just against Reginald, but against everyone who had ever doubted me. I felt the sting of betrayal deep in my chest, but I wouldn't let it stop me. I picked up the phone and called that family member. I know what you've been doing, I said, my voice steady but cold, and I'm done. You've made your choice and I've made mine. Don't bother coming back. I hung up before they could respond, cutting ties with the last person I thought I could rely on. It hurt, but it only solidified my resolve. If I had learned anything from this entire ordeal, it was that I couldn't trust anyone but myself. As the days passed, the legal battle intensified. Reginald's lawyer came at me with everything they had, throwing one last desperate claim in my direction. They tried to say that the mansion was tied up in financial troubles, that it was too risky for me to proceed with the purchase. They wanted me to back down, to retreat, but I wasn't going anywhere. I consulted with my own lawyer, going over the strategy once again. They had underestimated me. I've been in this game a long time, I thought, and I've got the upper hand now. The evidence we had was solid. The debts they spoke of weren't as dire as they made them seem. And I had something they didn't: resilience. I wasn't backing down this time. The final showdown was coming. Reginald, still believing he could control the situation, decided to make one last play. He called me, demanding that I back off. "I'm not going to let you ruin everything," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "If you think you're going to get away with this, you're sorely mistaken." His threats didn't scare me anymore. "I fought for everything in my life, Reginald," I replied, my voice calm, almost soothing. "I'm not afraid of you or your threats. This isn't just about the mansion. It's about me taking back my life. You can't stop me." The silence was deafening. I knew I had won. The final confrontation took place in the family's living room with everyone gathered around. I had no intention of backing down, no matter how much they tried to pressure me. Reginald tried one last time to manipulate me, twisting the situation, making it seem like I was in the wrong. But I stood tall, unyielding. "I'm not the woman you once knew," I said, facing him directly. "I gave everything to this family, everything. I stood by you when no one else would. But now it's time for me to stand for myself." I laid out the truth in front of everyone. How I had been treated. How my entire life had been dictated by everyone else. This wasn't just about the mansion. It was about me reclaiming my dignity, my freedom. I could feel the weight of the years lift off my shoulders as I finally spoke the truth, and for the first time, I didn't care about their opinions. This was my fight, my victory. And then it was over. I stood in front of the mansion, the place that had held me captive for so long. The deal had been finalized, and the mansion was mine again. But this wasn't just about the mansion. It was about reclaiming my life. I stepped through the front door, feeling the weight of the past and the relief of the future ahead of me. The mansion was no longer a symbol of my submission. It was a testament to my strength, my resilience. This is my home, I thought. Not just a building. This is me, stepping into my future. But even as I stood there, the weight of the mansion around me, I knew the journey wasn't over. The real work was just beginning. I'd reached the breaking point. And for once, I wasn't going to stay silent. The years of manipulation, the lies, the betrayals, it all came crashing down on me. I had been the obedient wife, the loyal mother, the person who kept the family together. But no more. Reginald and my family had taken too much from me, and I had allowed it for far too long. It was time for everything to end, for me to stand in the light and tell the truth. I sat in front of my lawyer, papers strewn across the table. Each document was a small victory, but I couldn't help but feel a weight, a heaviness that hadn't left me for years. Reginald had put that weight on me, the control, the manipulation, the way he made me doubt myself. It was all over now. But something unexpected happened. A discovery. A dark secret that I hadn't anticipated. The call came just as I was leaving my lawyer's office, my heart still pounding with adrenaline. A family member, someone I thought I could trust, had been working with Reginald the entire time. The truth hit me like a slap in the face. This person, someone I had confided in, had been betraying me from the start. They had been feeding Reginald information, undermining everything I had worked for. I was stunned. I couldn't believe it. But the shock quickly faded, replaced by a deep, cold anger. I dialed their number, my hands trembling slightly. but my resolve was steel. "You've been working with him, haven't you?" I asked, my voice tight, controlled. I don't know what you mean," they stammered, clearly trying to play innocent, but I wasn't buying it. "I know everything. And you know what? You're cut off. I won't let anyone stand in my way. Not anymore." I hung up without waiting for a reply. I didn't need their support. Not anymore. This was my fight, and I'd be damned if I let anyone else dictate my future. As if things weren't complicated enough, Reginald made one last attempt to push me back. His lawyer sent me a threatening letter, claiming that the mansion wasn't really mine, that there were legal documents, hidden financial dealings, things that could stop me from taking back what was rightfully mine. I felt a pang of fear, but I wasn't going to let it control me. This was just one last-ditch effort to manipulate me, and I wasn't having it. I called my lawyer immediately, telling them to prepare for battle. This is just another game, I thought, and I know how to play it. The legal battle was heating up, but with every move Reginald made, I was one step ahead. I could feel the power shift, and it felt damn good. The final confrontation with Reginald was set. I knew it was coming, but I had no idea how much it would change everything. He showed up at my door, all polished arrogance and desperate charm, ready to pull one last stunt. "Aria," he started, "you don't really want to do this. Think of the kids. Think of the family. We can work this out. Let's not make this public." His words were designed to manipulate, to make me second-guess myself, but not this time. "Do you think I haven't thought of the kids?" I replied coldly. "This isn't just about property. It's about my life, my dignity, my respect. You took all that from me, but I'm taking it back now," he stammered. Tried to argue, but I wasn't listening. "You thought you could break me," I said, stepping closer. "But all you did was make me stronger." But just when I thought I had finally found my footing, Reginald made a last-ditch effort. He threw money at me, offered to buy me out of everything, to let me walk away with some of the house and a cash settlement. His voice dripped with fake concern, but it was clear what he was really after. He thought I was stupid enough to fall for it. "No more deals, Reginald," I said, cutting him off. "No more lies. This is over. You can't buy me off anymore." I had no interest in his dirty offers. It wasn't about money. It was about my life. And I wasn't going to let him control that anymore. The final legal victory came swiftly after that. Reginald's team folded, and everything was settled in my favor. The mansion, once a symbol of my years of sacrifice and submission, was officially mine. But the victory wasn't just about the property. It was about reclaiming everything that had been taken from me. My voice, my power, my autonomy. I stood in front of the mansion, taking in the sight. It wasn't just a building. It was a symbol. The victory was sweet, but I knew that it wasn't the end. The real work was just beginning. I had reclaimed what was mine, but now I had to rebuild my life from the ground up. I've taken back everything, I thought, stepping through the front door. Now it's time to figure out what to do with it. The aftermath of everything I'd been through still weighed on me. The battles, the lies, the victories, so much had happened in such a short span of time. I stood in a space that was once my prison, now a symbol of everything I'd fought for. But even with the mansion in my name, with my life in my hands, something still felt unfinished. I had won, yes. Reginald was out of the picture, his manipulations exposed for all to see, but the emotional scars were still there. It wasn't just about the house. It wasn't even just about the money or the respect I had reclaimed. It was about me, about finding myself after so many years of being lost in someone else's narrative. As I looked around the familiar rooms, I couldn't help but feel a wave of nostalgia. There were memories here, some good, many bad, but all of them had shaped who I was now. The woman who had taken back what was hers. The woman who had refused to stay in the shadows any longer. But even as I felt the satisfaction of my victory, there was an emptiness I couldn't ignore. I had rebuilt my world, but the process had torn apart so much in its wake. Reginald's fate was sealed, but mine was just beginning to take shape. I've fought, I've won, but I'm still left with a scar that won't fade, I thought, leaning against the fireplace. The unexpected resolution came just as I was about to settle into this new chapter of my life. A call from a family member, someone I had written off, someone I thought would never come around, shocked me. They had been working behind the scenes, trying to make amends, to undo some of the harm they had done. It wasn't a perfect apology. It wasn't even exactly what I wanted, but it was enough. I never expected this, I said to myself, holding the phone with shaking hands. But maybe it's what I needed all along. The call wasn't just about the apology. It was about understanding the roots of betrayal and the effort to heal. There was still a part of me that didn't want to forgive, that didn't want to let go of the anger. But I realized something in that moment. I didn't need to carry that anger forever. I was stronger than that. This wasn't a resolution I had planned, but in a way, it felt like the missing piece to a puzzle I didn't know I had started putting together. And then there was Reginald. We had to face each other one last time. When we met, it wasn't with the fiery rage I had once felt. I didn't need to confront him with anger anymore. I didn't need him to apologize or grovel. I simply needed closure. Reginald, I started, my voice steady. It's over. This isn't about revenge anymore. It's about me finally taking control of my life. He tried to argue, of course. He tried to blame me, tried to say that things could have been different, that I didn't understand everything he'd done, but I wasn't interested in his excuses. I didn't need his version of the story anymore. It's over, and that's enough for me, I told him, looking into his eyes for the last time. And with that, I knew I was truly free. The final confrontation marked the end of the battle, but it also marked the beginning of something new. I didn't know what was coming next, but I was ready for it. The rebuilding had begun, but it wasn't just about the house. It was about me, about rediscovering who I was without the shadows of Reginald or my past hanging over me. I found myself looking into the mirror one morning, a sense of peace washing over me. The woman looking back was different, stronger, sure of herself, and determined to move forward. I'm not the person I was, I reflected. I've learned too much to go back to what I knew. The final act of redemption wasn't just about me finding peace. It was about reclaiming my place in the world. My family, my community, they all saw me in a new light. I wasn't just the wife who stood by silently. I wasn't just the woman who had been wronged. I was the one who fought. Think back, who won? And who was ready to show others that they too could stand up for themselves. I began working with other women who had gone through similar struggles, helping them find their own strength. It wasn't about seeking recognition, it was about giving back. I had taken back my life, and now I was passing on what I had learned to others. I took back what was mine, but now I give back what I've learned. I thought, as I stood at the front of a small gathering, sharing my story with those who needed to hear it. As I walked away from the past, I knew the future was uncertain, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid to face it alone.